Welcome to the Tough Decisions Network. This is our special Saturday edition called Step Up Your Game with Dan. I'm your host, Dennae Handford, and I'll be discussing topics to help you make better decisions to increase your productivity, increase your sales, and improve your overall marketing. Visit toughdecisions.net to sign up for our free weekly entrepreneur email. Before we get started, let's hear from one of our sponsors. Have you ever thought about investing in real estate, but find yourself so busy that you don't have time for it? Do you have FOMO, which is the fear of missing out? At HandfordCapital.com, we help investors with passive real estate investments that project better returns than traditional investment vehicles such as the stock market. If you'd like to find out more about our passive real estate investments, visit HandfordCapital.com. That's HANDFORD Capital.com. We will jump on a call with you to discuss your investment goals and to see if our investments are a good fit for you. This advertisement is not to be construed as an offer or recommendation to buy or sell a security. Visit HandfordCapital.com. On the podcast with us today is Case Kinney. Case, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to chat with you.
Well, Case, give us a little bit of a background about who you are, why I actually invited you onto the podcast as an entrepreneur to share with our listeners. Obviously, today's episode is all about how to step up your game, how to increase your sales, how to increase your productivity and marketing. So talk to the listeners a little bit about your background as an entrepreneur and where your current focus is right now.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely appreciate you having me on. I'm excited to chat. Yeah, I think simply put, basically with what you just described, I've been living that the past couple of years as an entrepreneur, as a business owner. I live in Chicago. I run an online publication called Pursuit.com, PRSUIT.com. It's an email newsletter similar to the Skim, if you're familiar with that model. Basically, it's a daily newsletter. We do a lot of different things, work with a lot of different brands, and it's really taken off. It's part of the larger portfolio of brands that I own as the owner of Trep Media Group. But yeah, I think my experience the past couple of years has been everything that you just described, making pivots to ensure that we're increasing sales, that we're marketable, and ensure that we're scaling at a rate that puts us ahead in business, not just to be satisfied with, small gains. I'm an entrepreneur. I always want more. And I think the past year has been really pivotal in that. We've made a lot of really tactical decisions to help in that regard. But yeah, I'm happy to talk about anything in there. There's a lot. I think online publishing, digital marketing is a really interesting space. It's really cool because you can make a quick decision. And just because of the internet, it can have a very, very quick and tangible effect.
Well, and there's so many different questions that I'm just coming up with as you're giving me your introduction. I know we talked a little bit in the green room, but before we start talking about some of those tactical things that you did a year ago to really pivot and really exponentially grow, Pursuit, can you dive into maybe some of the background things about why you actually started Pursuit.com? That's PRSUIT.com for those of you who are listening. But can you talk to us a little bit about why you created that? Because it seems to me like, the daily email thing is definitely a really cool thing to do, but it's a lot of work. And I know you know that because you're doing it, but it's a lot of work. It's a daily email, a lot of content that you're having to, write and produce.
For sure. It is a lot of work, but I think the alternative is a lot more work. The alternative being the traditional way of online publishing, I call it blogging. I started Pursuit 4 years ago, and 3 years of that was spent just in the trenches, grinding it out as a blog, as Pursuit.com, posting daily content on the .com, trying to get people to visit the .com, and then monetizing that way. That's traditional online publishing. And that is really, really difficult in this day and age in 2018 and 2019. Really difficult because essentially what you're doing is you're building your home on rented land. Rented land being land that Facebook owns, land that Google owns, any land that's reliant on an algorithm to drive people your way. It's rented land in that those guys, they make a change, they see something differently, and you can go out of business. It's actually really insane. I've seen so many companies, online publishing companies, go out of business. They have great content, but when Facebook decides that they no longer want to show people in their newsfeed items from publishers or blogs, their business is gone. They get no traffic. So that's the hard way. And I grinded that out for a long time. And it was great. We built a company. We had a huge contributor network. We worked with folks like Gary Vaynerchuk, Mark Manson, James Altucher, big name people. And it was doing well. until kind of honestly 2017, 2018, it just became really difficult to scale. And that, yeah, we had great Facebook following, we had decent traffic and search engine optimization and things like that, but we were building on someone else's land, and they were constantly making changes that made it really difficult for us to continue to scale. So that's like the backstory to kind of, obviously there was a big change in our model this time last year, but like intrinsic motivation to create this company is I've always been a writer. I've always been a voracious reader. And there was definitely, there's a lot of content around, business and entrepreneurship and things like that. But I really wasn't convinced that there was a good central hub for self-development content, which is what Pursuit's all about. It's all about, call it self-help, self-development, whatever you want to call it, but geared towards a very Gen Z millennial audience, kind of cynical, a little bit quirky, funny in that way. So like that was our point of differentiation. People loved it. But there came a point last year when it was like, what are we doing here? We are a small six-figure business. How are we going to scale this? I realized that something needed to change.
So I'm actually on a couple of different daily emails myself. I'm not right now on yours, which I'm going to be after this episode. But when you started to create this daily email that you now have, that's become very popular. How many subscribers do you guys have now?
Currently 127,000 daily.
Wow, man, that's a big number as far as numbers of subscribers. I can't imagine what you're paying on a monthly fee to send out those emails every day. I'm sure it's pretty high, especially from 127,000 a day. I mean, you do the math on that. I mean, 127 times 30 days, you're looking at 3.8 million emails you guys are sending out a month. And so, what was it that you guys thought that you could do differently to really stand out from the crowd? Because when we talk about, scaling, we talk about, increasing your productivity, a lot of times you got to figure out, not a lot of times, in order to do that, you've got to figure out where is your little slice of the pie and where can you really fit your niche in.
Yeah, that was the exact thought process, honestly. It actually moving from being a blog to an email made it easier for us because one, the universe of popular players and successful companies was just so much smaller that the competition, there really wasn't competition. And that's what allowed us to do well, I think. If you look at the daily emails, I'm subscribed to a bunch as well, but the majority of the ones that are large, that are marketable, that people know about, are focused on current events in business. I mean, you look at the Skim, you look at the Morning Brew, the Hustle, folks like that, they're focused on quick current event type summaries, whether it's focused on Wall Street or investments or technology or entrepreneurship or just daily current events, politics, like that's what they're focused on. There are some smaller ones out there that are focused on self-development, but none of them have scaled. So I saw that as an opportunity to kind of bulldog my way into this space, take what we had, which was an audience, and say, hey, all of our content is here, let's go. And then, then we put in some good ad spend and some strategic marketing efforts and a lot of social proof, and it just kind of blew up from there. We have a good grasp on that space, but the differentiation was easy. It's, there's just not a lot of daily emails that are focused on self-development. Everyone gets the emails about business in their inbox, but they're not getting this type of content.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's interesting because, I'm on the Hustle and I'm on one. It's actually called the Oxford Center for Entrepreneurs. And it's a kind of the same thing as like a daily update of, different topics around entrepreneurship and marketing and various things like that. So yours being more around self-development, I don't know of very many, if any at all, that are around that at all. And so let me ask you this. So obviously you said a year ago you made some changes. What were those main changes that you did to really scale your business?
Yeah, I mean, the big change was where we stopped completely publishing content online.
Nothing online anymore. Nothing on the website. Online. Just straight up go to the website. All you can do is put your email in.
Correct. Made it very easy for people, not giving them too many choices. Here's where our content lives. And then boom, we went from there. And honestly, it was, sometimes you get lucky, honestly, doing this in Q4 when a lot of advertisers and brands are spending money, Black Friday, holiday sales, things like that. And the timing was just kind of really there for me. And I remember we pivoted and we're like, hey, here's where we are. And then like a week or two later, right, when we were in the midst of really figuring out how it works, a couple of brands with large budgets started hitting me up. We were like, hey, Pursuit looks cool. What's your audience size? Metrics. Okay, we have budget for you. We'd love to, sponsor the email. And then, when you get an influx of revenue at a time when you're pivoting, it just worked out really well. We turned that right around into our own marketing efforts. It kind of blew up in Q4, in Q1, and then just kind of carried on into this year.
Okay, so now I have even more questions about what you just said. So,
Yep.
obviously, when you first started this, that was probably your original intent is to eventually get people to pay to sponsor the email or to sponsor the content, and that's how you make money. Because I'm sure that when you had it on the website, you had Google Ads and all these
Yep.
other kind of banners and stuff like that that you kind of monetize the content with, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. So now you have this email, and you can't necessarily do it like that in an email. I mean, I think you probably could in some form or fashion, but for the most part, you're going to have people who are paying you a fee of some sort to get access to be able to sponsor your particular email. So you said that this just came organically. People just started reaching out to you organically.
It did. And that's what I'm saying. Sometimes as an entrepreneur, you just get lucky. And that's what happened in Q4. But honestly, from there, it was so easy. Like, we're not a huge company. We're not, a 9-8 figure company. We're still a 6-figure company. But the model was really easy to close revenue on, in that, again, to our conversation earlier, when there's a small competition, when there's a small pool of competitors that are larger, significantly larger than you, it was really easy for me to go in and actually get additional advertisers. So like, you look at like The Hustle, for example, they're one of the top daily emails that focus on, business news, tech news, Silicon Valley, things like that. They've really scaled. They're over 1 million daily subscribers. They work with a ton of different brands, and they prove a lot of value for those brands. They have a lot of ROI for those brands. It was really easy for me because they've done such a great job of their sponsorships of those brands. All I did was hit up those brands. It was like, hey, I see that you're working with The Hustle. Looks like they're doing well for you. Here's what we do. We're similar but different. I think we do really well for you. Would you like to test? They say, okay, here's 10 grand. Here's 20 grand. Like, boom, easy. Like, very easy. Like, my competitors made the job easy for me. And that's basically coming out of Q4, making that change with some of the organic folks reaching out. I was then able to scale into doing more prospecting and things like that from a traditional sales model. But my close rate was insane because I knew who to talk to. I knew how to talk to them. And the groundwork, the case studies were already laid for me because of my competitors. So it really was a simple, I wouldn't call it an easy process. It was a simple process. I knew what to do.
So I want to dive into, you have 127,000 emails. How long did it take you to go from, probably just a few hundred or maybe a few thousand to growing to 127,000?
Yeah, I mean, when we pivoted, we had 10, 12,000 emails or so right off the bat. So yeah, so that was in December of last year. So call it December to now, call it around a year, a little less than a year, being able to do that. I mean, there's certain days when we'll grow by 2,000-3,000 emails, depending on what we're doing, depending on the growth model. But yeah, I mean, it's once you hit a certain point, and we had a lot of assets at our disposal, right? So our Instagram, I had 140,000. My own personal brand, Case Kenny, has 16,000. I have my own podcast, which is doing really well. New Mindset Who Dis. I use that to promote Pursuit. Like, a lot of different assets at our disposal. But when you have ad revenue coming in, you can then do certain paid partnerships and really blast it off. So yeah, I mean, about over 100,000 new subscribers in less than a year. I think some people might consider that small. I know the big boys, the big email guys right now grow. They grow that in a month sometimes. But for me, very happy with it when you're still proving out a new model.
No, I think that's great. What are some of the different ways that you guys are promoting and getting your subscribers? Are you, obviously you had, like you said, your stuff on Instagram and your own social media platforms, but are there any other like paid things that you were doing to increase that list?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, so we'll do paid ads on Instagram. Those convert really, really well for us. Just like cheeky millennial meme type ads do really well. We'll also pay to sponsor other people's emails as well. Like, and they'll send their users your way. You could pay to do that. I also am friendly with some of the guys who run the other emails, and we'll do reciprocity trades. I'll be like, hey, if you promote Pursuit or endorse Pursuit in yours, I will endorse your email 5 times in mine, to level set that the scale on your end, things like that. Certainly the podcast route goes really well as well. Like, the mentioning Pursuit in my podcast, very lean forward audience, they listen, doing it that way. But also, like, we leaned in on a lot of press. Like, I know I'm fortunate to know a lot of people who write for Forbes and Inc. and Fortune and things like that, and reaching out to them, telling my story to them, seeing if they'd be interested to cover it. And we got a lot of press in Entrepreneur. We were named the top email newsletter ahead of the Skim in Entrepreneur a couple months back, which did really well. So yeah, there's a lot of different things. I mean, it's, akin to any promotional effort you're doing, but you're focused on one metric, which is acquisition, their email. So being focused on one thing is really helpful, but it is kind of scary because there's no ROI. There's no immediate ROI on it. It's not like running a Facebook ad where you could track for every dollar you spend the revenue that comes in. It doesn't work like that. Then I have to go out on the back end and secure advertisers who can then give me flat rate revenue that then offsets those marketing charges. So it's you gotta definitely know what you're doing and know where you're heading, but not be afraid to spend some capital to then increase your numbers so you can get higher and larger advertisers.
So how many people do you have right now working on your team that kind of helps you help put that content together every day?
I have one.
Wow. Yeah. That's awesome, because you said, it's still just a six-figure business, but when you say six figures, I mean, if it was like a team of like 20 people, yeah, it wouldn't be very much profit, but I'm sure there's some pretty nice profit in there with just one person else on the team, right?
Yeah. I mean, I like money, and I've had other businesses. I've done a lot of businesses as an entrepreneur. And, I want to make sure that I don't, one, dilute ownership, but two, keep it lean and mean. I see a lot of companies just overcomplicate things. Like, my skill set is perfect for this company. My skill set is that of content creation and sales. I've been in sales for a long time in the ad tech space, and I know how to close deals. So really, the offset that I just need one other person, an editor, to help me with the content, and someone to help me with growth, logistics, billing, automation, things like that. Obviously, once we get larger, we're going to have to increase that, but that was very intentional with that. Early on, when I first started Pursuit, I fell into every entrepreneur's the fallacy of thinking you need a big team and you need titles and all this crap. And I had like 12 people. Like, some were my homies, some were like VAs that I paid part-time. And it was stupid. It was stupid. A business development person, a salesperson, a creative director, like really, I'm cringing right now. And I realized that you don't need to do that. You need to drive revenue, and you need to have a great product. And
so it's you and then one other person?
Correct.
Okay. And so is that other person a VA?
No. She is a full-blooded, talented, Chicago-based individual who I know very well.
Okay. All right. But you've used some VAs in the past, and you probably use them occasionally for one-off things or things like that.
Correct. And I still do for my personal brand, and I do side consulting and things like that, and they help with that. But I would never have a VA be charged with creating the face of your product, be it, in my case, our content. I would never do that.
Sure. So, and if you don't want to answer these things, you can tell me, let's pass on that. But I'm going to ask you a couple of questions and see if you would be able to help our listeners understand kind of some of the metrics behind your email list and stuff. Because I see that, obviously we're looking at this from an email list standpoint and a business standpoint. And so I also see this concept of a daily email that could be used in multiple different categories, and not just, self-help, personal development, that kind of thing. I'm even looking at it myself for my own, business that I have, various businesses that we have. So it took you about a year to grow from about 10 to 12,000 to really 10x that, if you will, to 127,000, and getting, a couple thousand, every once in a while you might get a couple thousand a day, but, it's definitely growing, really fast. So I like that. What kind of platform do you use to be able to send out these daily emails?
Yeah, we use a platform called ActiveCampaign. It's similar to like a MailChimp or any of those more entry-level platforms, but kind of their enterprise version of it.
And what's your typical open rate for an email that you send out on a daily basis?
Yeah, so it depends, because we do segment our emails depending on what we're trying to do, but generally it's around 42%.
Wow, that's pretty high. I mean,
it is high. It is high. It's solid. I'll say it's solid. I want to do better.
No, I mean, I think that's great. I mean, I have some email lists that I have right now that are, right around that, 35, 38%. And it's because I'm sending them out on a regular basis. And I think that's one of the reasons why you get that high open rate. Now, obviously, when you look at open rates on products like ActiveCampaign and MailChimp, if somebody doesn't download the pixel on the email, you don't actually get that true reading. But like, there's a lot of emails that I get that I purposely don't make. I make sure nothing gets downloaded. I just review the content.
Yeah. There's, reporting for emails is very basic. There's some companies that offer more granular views into your emails, but yeah, it's like that way. And to get 42%, like, it would be a lot lower if I wasn't so savage about removing people from my list. Like, I have a whole automation sequence built in such that if you subscribe and you don't take a certain amount of actions within a relatively small amount of time, I'm going to just automatically unsubscribe you, because one, you're increasing my hosting fees, and two, you're decreasing my deliverability, which is what I'm really adamant about. So I do a lot of things to kind of control my own fate there, but I think, yeah, creating great content and doing it on a daily basis definitely helps maintain that solid engagement.
Okay. So now I have two other questions about that same thing. You're creating more questions for
I
me,
love
which
it.
is great. So what's the typical unsubscribe rate?
Yeah, I don't have. Ooh, that's a good question. I don't have an exact. I mean, it's like less than 2%. I could tell you that much from the
Okay.
last time I actually looked at it. It's tough because the platform isn't great about decoupling unsubscribes that are user based or based on my automation. And I unsubscribe a lot of people, which is way more than 2%. I'll unsubscribe 10%. I unsubscribed 50,000 people once when our list was way up closer to 200,000 and brought it way back down. So the reporting isn't great. So I'm not too sure, but it's either they're unsubscribing or I am unsubscribing them. Either way, the list ebbs and flows based on that engagement.
Okay, so I love this. That was my next question, was going to be about how you select who you're going to unsubscribe. So because of the basic reporting that they do on emails, what do you do? What are some of the things you look for and actions that you're looking for before you actually remove somebody?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty simple, honestly. I think there's probably more complicated, more well thought out ways. It's basically when you subscribe, you get a welcome email. And then from there, you get the next business day's email. And then I basically have an automation sequence out that scores users based on how often they open an email. Just opens, not even clicks, just opens. And if they don't open an email within the first 8 sends, which would be like a week and a half of sends, I will then hit them with an email sequence that says something to the extent of, hey, what's up? I'm Case, just wanted to introduce myself, whatever. And then they're back in the sequence. If they don't then open up another one within a set amount of time, they'll get another email that's like, hey, just kind of cheeky, like, hey, I'm worried about you. Like, is everything okay? And then eventually it's that and repeat until they point. And if they get to a point where they haven't opened an email in about a month, then I just unsubscribe them. I'll tell them I'm unsubscribing them, but then they go. So it's kind of like a scoring sequence.
That's great.
Scoring plus like a drip sequence from myself to try to get them to re-engage.
So what do they have to do once you send them that email saying, hey, if you don't do X, what is that X between now and the next 3 days? Yeah. I'm going to unsubscribe you.
So I mean, it's pretty brutal. If they reply to any of those emails, then I remove them from the sequence because sometimes people are just that way. But otherwise, it's just about scoring. The threshold for unsubscribing is pretty decently high. So as long as they open like 4 or 5, like they're good to go. But yeah, I just ask them if they're interested or not, and if they're not, they can unsubscribe. So it's basically the opposite. I ask them to unsubscribe. Sometimes they do, which it makes my job easier. But sometimes, sometimes people are busy. Sometimes people enter the wrong email address that they don't really check that much, and then they'll want to change it. ActiveCampaign is pretty easy to use in that it allows them to adjust their settings and whatnot.
And of course, when somebody gets bounced or whatever, you're going to remove those people automatically because that just hurts your statistics.
Exactly.
So this is great. So have you thought about other areas of where you could start another daily email, or is this kind of where your core focus is right now and you're just going to try to increase the revenue by getting more sponsors and things like that?
I'm pretty focused here. There's a lot of different ways to monetize outside of sponsors. Obviously, like I'm not trying to build a business based on advertisers. I never want to play in that realm. That's just for now. Obviously, the other ways to monetize are through your own products, which is kind of the direction we're heading in probably back half of next year, is to sell our own products, do events and things like that. It's a pretty proven business model, maybe bake in some affiliates and whatnot there. But yeah, for now, I'm pretty focused on this vertical. There are some things I'm considering with SMS and in that realm, but I love email because you control your own destiny. You own that distribution. No one can take it away from you except for the user. There's no algos that are going to affect it. And as long as you create great content and you deliver on the expectations that you set for your audience, I think it's a winning vertical for me from a writing perspective and from a marketing perspective. So I'm pretty focused on this. And I do love the self-development space. I think I know myself pretty well. I just turned 30, but I know, how I was in my 20s and in my 30s. And like people want this type of content. I mean, you see the veracity with which people consume like quotes and like self-help quotes and whatnot, but like this content, I try to make it much more real and relatable, and people like it. Like I've been very humbled by the response. Like people reach out to me all the time and say, I've changed their life and all this stuff that I'm not really emotionally capable of handling. So I just say thank you. it is cool, and I don't really want to play in another space that's focused on business news. I think other people do that great, and I don't think I would do it justice. So I'm going to focus on where I know what I could speak about. I do this on my podcast. I do it within the email. Like, this is where I belong. I think I'm more authentic here, so I'm gonna stay there.
Well, that's great, Case. Well, I really appreciate you taking some time to be with us here today on the podcast. And how can the listeners reach out to you if they want to, follow you more? Or, obviously they can jump on the prsuit.com website and join and subscribe to the email list. How can they, follow you a little bit more?
Yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, pursuit.com. You can get the email. If you want to follow me on Instagram, it's @case.kenny. That's the best way to get a hold of me. I always respond to all my DMs. Or you could always listen to my own podcast. It's called New Mindset Who Dis. It's a weekly podcast, twice weekly, Mondays and Wednesdays. But Instagram's usually the best way to get a hold of me. DM me, comment. I always love responding.
Well, Case, thank you so much for taking some time to be with us, and look forward to continue to follow you. I'm going to subscribe right now to your email list, and looking forward to getting your daily emails from this point forward, and look forward to having you on a future episode as you continue to grow as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, thank you, Dan. I appreciate it. It's a good chat.
Thank you for listening to the Tough Decisions Network. Be sure to visit toughdecisions.net to gain access to show notes for this episode and to join our free weekly entrepreneur email, where we will send you news about the latest technology for your business, inspiring quotes, and the latest books for entrepreneurs. That's toughdecisions.net.